What's up, guys? Duran Torres, School of Chrome Guide Service, SOC flies. Gonna do a fly that's a bit more technical for you today. These are the flies I like to tie. My big thing is Spey flies for Steelhead. Using composite loops. I've been showing some videos of tying jigs, just kind of for fun and for a lot of my friends that like to fish with jigs. But this is what I really like to do. This one is a bit more technical. There's some cool techniques I've learned in here from other people. It's a cool fly. It's a single post Spey fly, single station Spey fly, I guess, that's got no weight to it. Some fake jungle cockeyes, ostrich, and the color scheme is orange and purple. On the fly that we're going to tie here, this is a finished fly, but on the next fly that we're going to tie, inside it's going to be black instead of the silver color. So here we go. To save a little bit of time, I've already tied my intruder wire onto the shank of my hook. Okay, it's just this. It's Sanyo's intruder wire. This is purple just to kind of match with the fly. Got a few wraps of thread on there just to get a base and get my wire tied down. Okay, so the way these flies work, once you figure out the kind of structure to these certain flies, then it's up to you to play around with colors and everything else you want to add to it. But there's a few like technical kind of things that you got to get down first. Everybody ties them differently. Everybody ties them with kind of their own style. The way I like to tie these and any kind of Spey flies for the most part is using composite loops. And I learned this from watching OPST videos and listening and reading about Jerry French and Ed Ward and those guys, Scott Howell, all those guys that kind of came up with that intruder style. And so that's kind of how I'm going to tie this. A lot of guys will tie them a little bit differently, but I tie with composite loops. I think it's an awesome way to tie. Okay. To start off, we're going to make a loop. Okay. All of the materials that I tie in, most of the materials that I tie in, I guess, are going to be with loops. Okay. There'll be other videos later on, and you can look up other people's videos too about how to make dubbing loops. That's all this is a dubbing loop. And you have a dubbing spinner that goes in there. And so I'm not going to go into all that stuff. It'll take too long. But this one I'll just kind of show you how I tie the fly. The back, there's always kind of a butt section in the back, just to kind of give a little bit more color, and that's just kind of how the fly is tied, like a spot, I guess. So this is ice dub pink. So I'm going to take a little bit. With dubbing loops, you don't need a lot, and with dubbing in general, you don't need a lot. Okay, this ice dub, you take it and you just pull it apart. Put the strands together, pull them apart. Okay, you just kind of want the strands to be even. And actually, I might take just a little bit more in here. Let me see here. Yeah, I'll take just a little bit more of this. And I was looking for a different... Oh, there we go. That's what I was looking for. I'm actually going to mix it a little bit with the cinnamon ice WV. I'm going to mix it just because some of the different dubs, the way they're made, they have different consistencies. The pink shell one that I got, this ice dub, is very, very wiry. All the fibers are really individual and wiry. And this other ice WV cinnamon is a lot finer. Okay, so I'm just going to mix them together just to kind of create more of a matty, I guess, style. I want it to be a little bit thicker. So I'll break these apart. So my dubbing is, I don't know, a ½ inch wide or so, maybe a little bit more than that. Doesn't have to be too perfect. Okay, open up my dubbing loop, and I'm going to put my material inside my dubbing loop. The whole point of tying flies with composite loops is that you put your material in these loops, you spin them up, and you create the texture and the consistency in the materials that you want. You can make them thick, buggy, you can comb them out, make them really fine. That's what gives you the freedom in this. Pinch your thread and spin your dubbing spinner. Spins up your material. Okay. So in this case, I want the back of this to be bugged out a little bit, but not crazy. Here we go. Awesome tool for composite loops and any kind of loop tying. It's a toothbrush, an old toothbrush. So I just take this and I just pick out, kind of brush back and pick out till I get the consistency that I want in my loop. Okay, kind of fold these fibers back, and then I will wrap one wrap right in front of the other one, peeling my fibers back. And I'm just making a spot here. And it's almost, I'm making a spot, but I'm making a, you'll hear it called the dubbing ball on the back of this fly. Okay, once I get it there, I tie it off. A couple wraps. Get this out of the way and then knock this over. Okay, kind of clean everything up. Peel all your fibers back and bring your thread right back to the base of that. Okay, you can take this, you can brush it forward, brush it back out. The cool part that I learned about composite loops, actually I want some of this stuff out, so I'm just gonna point cut some of these fibers out. There we go. I don't want it quite that long. Okay. All right. There we go. Again, one of the things that I learned about this stuff is when you're tying composite loops, when you're tying steelhead flies, you can't be afraid to be rough with the fly while you're tying it, because the steelhead's going to be 10 times more rough on your fly than you are. Don't be delicate with it. Don't try to make everything so perfect, and not rough it up a little bit, because it needs to be tough when you're fishing it for steelhead. Okay, next thing, these fake synthetic, or these fake jungle cockeyes, I guess. I don't know another way to call them that, but they're just paper eyes. And I'm going to put them on the back of this fly. Jungle cock is awesome to work with. It's kind of hard to come by, kind of expensive, so these fake jungle cockeyes are actually really cool. Right? I'm gonna put one on, put one at a time on. I'm gonna make these eyes. You're just gonna time in on the side here. I put one on this side. I'm gonna kind of line it up to where I want it to be. I only have one wrap. I'm gonna go one more wrap here. Light wraps, because you want to be able to move these eyes around so that they are placed where you want them to be. I'm looking right down on top of it to make sure that they are even on both sides, and then I'm gonna lightly wrap again and cinch those things down. Okay, there you go. The reason that that dubbing ball is back there is, one, for color, but two, it helps flare these jungle cockeyes out when I tie on there. If you're tying 2-post or 2-station intruder flies or 2-station spey flies, and right here you tie this bump and then you tie feathers on the back, it just helps splay them out a little bit like this. Okay, there we go. Jungle cockeyes on. Next is going to be this long body. A lot of the times I like to use holographic tinsel, but in this case I'm going to use some flat braid It's black, just to mix it up a little bit. Cut my braid off. Tie it in on the side. Work my way back. Make sure it's tied in really well. And I'm going to bring my thread all the way up to the front, about a half, I don't know, maybe a ½ inch or so from the front of the fly. Spin this braid and you're going to wrap this body. Okay. I overlap slightly, but not very much. You really want to put one right in front of the other just so it looks nice and even for you. Okay. Get to here. Tie my braid off. Couple wraps behind it. There we go. All right. Those are the two quick and easies. I'm going to bring my thread back to there, and then I'm going to decide, a little straggler here, decide where I'm going to start my big station. Okay, you can see, if you're matching it up here, the big station's coming next with all the different things in it. So I'm going to make my loop. And I'm going to bring this thread back until I think, bring it back to where I want to start my wrapping. And I'm going to bring my thread all the way back to the front again. Okay, so I got my loop tied. Dubbing spinners. I tend to misplace mine all the time. Okay. Now, I use one of these. I saw Jerry French do it, so I copied it because it's an awesome thing to do, to measure. I just took a ruler and measured ½ inch lines at a time, and this is where I make all of I place all my materials for my composite loops. So as I'm talking here, I'm placing all of these different pieces of material on this paper to measure it out, and then I'll bring it all up, wrap it, and you'll kind of see how that works. So this is what we're going to go with. We are going to go with all of the orange theme, orange and purple theme here. I'm going to take another chunk of the cinnamon ice dub and the pink shrimp shell, and I'm going to mix them again. Put one on top of the other, pull it apart, one on top of the other, pull it apart. Okay, so I basically pulled that in half and I have a little bit like this. I'm going to pull this in half too, and I'm just using these pieces right here as the foundation, and I'll show this to you like this. I'm going to lay this down, and it's going to help kind of stick all of my other feathery materials together. I'm going to go about 1.5 inches worth of stuff. The next thing that's going in there is Senyo's Predator Wrap. This is barred orange Predator Wrap. Cut off a little chunk of that. Bring it back. Okay, we're going to cut off probably about, have to be there, about 1 inch of material. I'm going to lay this down on top of my dubbing. Then I'm going to take some just holographic crystal flash. Not a lot of this one. This is more for color than substance. Take about the same inch of this. Trim it up. I'm going to lay it in there. Lay it right on top of the Predator Wrap that I have. And I'll show this to the camera when I'm done. I'm going to show the whole composite piece. But composite meaning I'm sticking all of these different things together in one loop. And it's going to blend up together. Next thing that's going to build into my shoulder is Arctic Fox. This is an orange color. Don't need a lot of this stuff. Okay, one thing that I learned early on when I was tying these flies is that more is almost less. Once you get your technique down, or excuse me, less is more. I don't want to go the other way. Less is more. Once you get your technique down, you don't need a lot of material, okay? You get too much material in there, your loop doesn't spin up right, and it gets bulky, and your fly doesn't look the way, at least I think it should look. It's not big, it won't be full of feathers and hair and everything and make it heavy, okay? I'm going to put the other piece of this dubbing back on top of that to kind of pinch it down, and then I will I'm going to set this to the side. So this is kind of what my composite loop looks like. I have all this material pinched together. I'm going to set that. That's going to be the front shoulder of this. I'm going to take the other pieces of this dubbing here, and I'm going to I'm going to leave that off to the side, and I'm going to get a different color here. The other color that I'm going to use is Ice Dub UV Black, but it's got a purple, some purple pieces into it. And I'm going to use this for the front. As I get purple, as I put the purple ostrich in here, I want the head to be darker than the back. So I'll take that chunk. I'm only going to lay about 3/4 of an inch of that down, and then we're going to get our ostrich. Okay. Our ostrich feather. In this case, I'm actually going to get, these are really fine tips. And this ostrich has, you can see the tips are a little bit more, they're flared out, they're not as pointy and fine, so I'm going to use this one this time. I'm going to take, find some pieces that I want here. Okay. And I'm going to take a good chunk of these things. I'm probably going to take a good dozen barbs of this ostrich. Okay. There you go, you got your chunk like this. Gonna measure this thing out. I want these fibers going, when they finish, I want them being just about to the point of the hook. I don't want them being way over like this. I want them being just about to the point, just like that. Okay. Pinch that off. Trim that end, and I'm going to put these in a nice big chunk on my black dubbing. Put the other piece of dubbing over the top of that. Again, it's going to secure it down, and this is where the fun starts. This is where, when you're tying these flies, material handling comes in big. You need to practice holding your materials and being able to maneuver with them. So I'm going to open my loop up, put one patch in here. That's my shoulder materials going in the front, and my ostrich, purple ostrich, and the black dubbing is going in behind it. There's the start of our composite loop. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take, and I'm going to keep this, I'm going to keep my loop pinched together. Keep my loop pinched together, and I'm going to use my finger on the back side, and I'm going to use a needle. Some people use bodkins or whatever. That, I mean, you can use a hook point, but the needle is the best thing, honestly. Adjust my fibers to where I want them. I don't want everything to be perfect and straight in there. I want it to be offset. I want it to be bunched or spread out. I want it to be not perfect looking. But you do want the fibers spread out a little bit, or else they'll bunch on top of each other. Okay, so there's that. Then I take my ostrich. I just make sure I get it up here, and I kind of poke at the fibers so they spread out a little bit and they're not bunched right on top of each other. Okay, there we go. Shoulder material, feathery material, wing material here. I actually don't like how much I don't like how much fox I have hanging off the back of this right here, so I'm going to trim that up a little bit. There we go. Okay. Pinch right below your wing material, spin, and then whoosh, let it go. Okay. Give one more spin here just to make sure we're good to go. Whoop. And you'll see me moving this stuff around a lot, like pulling on my hook. I'm putting a lot of pressure on my thread, and I'm putting a lot of pressure on my shank, and I'm picking the stuff out really hard. I'm being rough with it, so that's why you're going to see things move around. Okay, here's the next technique. You're going to take your needle or whatever, your some people like to use their whip finish with a little hook on the end of it, whatever you got, and you're going to pick this material out. Okay, you're going to go along the thread and you're going to pick this stuff out, and you're going to try to expose the thread. Okay, and maybe it'll be a little easier if I show you this way. I'm trying to expose the thread that's wrapped in there. Now that doesn't mean I'm going to pick all my material out so there's nothing left, but I'm just running my pick along the thread, and I'm trying to get any of that stuff that's bunched up in there broke loose. Okay, to make sure that is super tight. That's going to make sure when I do wrap this stuff, you're almost wrapping like a thread-sized material instead of big, bulky material. I'm going to do the same thing on the ostrich. Ostrich, you're going to want to be a little bit more careful with when you're picking. You don't just want to start ripping stuff out. I really just want to, on the ostrich, I just want to break this dubbing loose. Okay, I just want to break this dubbing that's kind of binding it together. I want to break some of it loose so it's not so thick on the thread. Okay, getting there. You can see these flies take time. They take practice and they take time. So when people are, well, that's why you see if you go to buy flies like this, why they're expensive. They take time. You don't just whip out a good, beefy, good-looking, durable Spey fly. You don't bust one out in 5 minutes, especially using composite loops. But I think the result of taking your time and doing these right is definitely worth it. Okay, picked out. Here comes that brush again. And I'm just gonna, this is when you get rough with it. All of those loose fibers in there that are just kind of hanging out, you don't want them in there. Brush it out. Same thing with the ostrich. Ostrich you want to be a little bit more gentle with. Okay, but this shoulder material, get that stuff roughed up. There you go. Composite loop is almost ready to wrap. Here's the key. The key, I have a drink of my tea. The key is water. Okay, I keep a coffee cup of water next to my fly tying vise. I'm gonna wet my fingers, and I'm gonna pinch these fibers, and I'm gonna fold them over. Okay, you're gonna pinch and fold this stuff so that it's all laying in one direction, and this is gonna be wet. It's gonna look weird if you're not used to seeing it like this. Okay, it's like you're parting hair, I guess. You're just pinching it. You're giving it a really good pinch and pulling it back. Really good pinch, wet, pull it back. You might ask, why the water? Why getting it wet? From what I've learned with this, number one, the fly is going to get wet anyway. So when you get it wet like this, everything kind of shrinks down, and you can make tighter and tighter wraps. And then when the materials dry out, they're really tight together, and they just they hold together a lot better. Okay, there is your wet composite loop, and now we're just gonna wrap. One wrap in front of the other. One wrap in front of the other. We are building this shoulder up. The reason why I use my measuring, my paper down here with the measurements on it is so that I'm not just guessing on how many wraps it's going to take me to get to the front of the fly. I don't want to spend a bunch of time putting this loop all together and then wrap everything up and I'm still a half inch, a quarter of an inch short of the eye of the hook. Okay, I'm making this so that I'm gonna, when I finish my fly, I have just enough for finishing the head off. Okay, one in front of the other. The cool thing is, when you make these composite loops, the dubbing in this fly really fills in the rest of the ostrich. Okay, and it just gives it an awesome look. Tie off my thread. Trim it. And I'm going to whip finish this. Peel everything back. Make sure my head is where I want it. Not too big and bulky. I'm going to whip finish. There's one. There is another. Okay, head's done. Note about the head, I'm going to actually color this purple later, and I'm going to head cement later. My thread is wet right now after all the wraps, so I wait till these flies dry before I go back and head cement and color in the head, just because the color doesn't take well when the thread's wet. Last piece to this. Fly looks ugly right now. Take your tool again, your needle, your pick, whatever you're going to use. And you can kind of tell now after just watching one of these that the two most important tools here, you have a toothbrush and you have a needle. If you're tying composite loops, those things are necessary. Okay, I'm just going to go through here gently and picking and rotating and picking this matted fiber down. I don't want any of these fibers folded in on each other. I don't want them hung up anywhere. I don't want any of these things to be crossed, and I want them to all be free so that when they're free to flow wherever they're going to flow once it dries. Okay, there we go. Picked out any of the spots. Take your toothbrush, and first of all, you're going to brush this stuff back. Okay, brush it back, and I'm being rough with this. Most people would think, what the heck are you doing? You're going to ruin the fly. But you're not. You're just building up the strength. Okay, you're making this thing durable. Brush it back. Brush it forward. Okay, there we go. It's going to look, I'm going to trim off. There's a couple of these guys here that are just hanging out. There we go. It looks funny right now because the barbs on this ostrich are wet, so they're really slick. And this stuff hasn't dried yet, but when it does dry, take this down so you can see both. When it does dry, it's going to fill out, the shoulder's going to puff up, and it's going to be a nice looking fly. In this one, I did put a little bit of flash down the side. This one I didn't. I like to make slight different variations of the same fly. So you can see this one has the black body. This one has the holographic body. This one has a little more flash to it than this one does. And that's just because sometimes the fish want something that's not as flashy. Same style. There you go. Single station intruder fly, or single station spey fly, excuse me. Got some jungle cock eyes. We'll let this thing dry, brush it out again, color up the head, put some head cement, and it's ready to fish. Want to check out more, go to schoolofchrome.com. You can see all the pictures of these spey flies. You can see pictures of the jigs. You can order them if you would like. You can send me messages if you have any questions.